We can get going again.
So ready?
Yeah.
Right, next topic, Brexit. Before we start, if we can... the hottest topic of the night. Before we start, if we can try and keep our answers short and sweet, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, so we can hear a lot more from the audience, hopefully, in this next topic. The first question is from Eben, from Windsor Boys School.
Hi, I'm Eben. So I know we can't wait to get into this. Windsor voted 54% to remain with a high voter turnout. How are you going to represent the views of this constituency?
Is that directed specifically? I'll repeat the question. Windsor voted 54% to remain with a high voter turnout. How are you going to represent the views of the constituency? Do you want to start off with that question, answer, Julian?
Oh, yeah, sure, why not? Yes, Evan, was it? Ebbert. Oh, hello, sorry, Evan. Well, look, it could have been so different, couldn't it? If Theresa May had said, OK, yes, it was voted to leave, but it was very close. And if she sought some sort of consensus across Parliament, I would have hated it, but we would have left, and we would have left by now. But what the Conservatives have actually done is they dithered, and then they've gone out to their extremes. They've been, essentially, it's the ERG wing of the party has led this. And then it's just been lies and obfuscation. And quite frankly, I think we have the right to say, look, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? It's going to ruin our future. And there just doesn't seem to be any good reason apart from get Brexit done, which is frankly nonsense. So, yeah.
Have Conservatives been dithering? Adam?
Conservatives been dithering? Not in the slightest. What's happened is I've been in Parliament for 14 years, and it's quite clear that the last Parliament, which was a minority government, was unable to do anything. It was just impossible to do anything whatsoever. And I think the Prime Minister was absolutely right to go back to Europe, get a decent deal, which means that we are leaving the European Union, so that we can move on. So it's quite clear. I'm going to try and keep it 20 seconds. So it's quite clear that if you vote Conservative, Brexit gets done on the 31st of January, and then we have a year to look out for the rest of the world rather than looking inward and secure free trade agreements elsewhere. So I think it's a really good outcome because the country can come back together in defining a new relationship.
The lady down here in white.
Hello, my name's Yvonne. I live at Edenwick. I just want to say to the whole panel, can you just answer his questions? Don't go into your little stream of what you've planned to say. It was a really clear-cut question. Please answer it.
Wisdom, do you want to answer the question?
I think I mentioned the proposition that what I'm going to do is give you the chance to tell me how I should vote. I may have my views, and I will try and persuade you of the views, but we can use existing platforms to create a solution. You dial in, you, just like as a bank, you deliver instruction to the bank. I will tell you how I'd like to vote, and if 2/3 of you say, we'd like you to vote this way, I will vote that way.
That doesn't really answer the question on Brexit, though.
It does. If you say,
if
if it's already done, then I have no vote. But what do we need to do? We need to get it done quickly, because business leaders locally are telling me that the uncertainty is killing them.
So you do want to get Brexit done, and you want to get it done quickly?
It has to be done quickly. We can't do it on for another 3 years.
Fintan.
Thank you. At last. Where were we? Anyway. Windsor voted to remain. Well done, Windsor. Brexit means Brexit is meaningless. In effect, it doesn't work. It will never work because it can't work.
David?
How will I represent the views of the people of Windsor? Well, I voted Remain, and I've signed the Remain Labour pledge. My belief is
That's
that...
not David, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were going down the line.
No, you carry on though.
Sorry.
You're on the roll.
There we go. I just can't help myself. And I think it's. I think that's I've said that that's how I will campaign in the confirmatory referendum that we provide. I don't think there is a good Brexit. I think the last 3 years have demonstrated that that's a very difficult thing to achieve. We will provide the best deal we think we can through renegotiation, and then we'll put that back to everybody else.
Sorry. David?
Okay, Brexit. My answer to you is this. Your vote for me, I represent you. The situation is you voted Remain. It was the biggest turnout, in probably one of the biggest turnouts of history on a referendum. And I am absolutely staunch that I will carry out whatever the constituents voted for and want to do. There is no waving from what my stance is. I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to be pulled into party line or be sacked or have to stand down. The only time I will stand down is if I cannot feel that I can't represent you and your vote, then I will stand down and I'll create a by-election, and then everyone will have a chance to put their pitches to you again, and you can make a decision. And I believe if everyone had done that at the start of Brexit, and they stood by their constituents, we would not be in this mess right now.
Lady in white, have they answered the question now?
I'm not sure. I mean, we want to hear some clear answers tonight. We didn't come here to hear the same old spiel.
Let's get a couple of more questions in from the audience, and maybe they might be able to answer those on Brexit. Over there, sorry, the lady.
Come again. Yeah.
Since 2016, there's been a huge rise in racial abuse. A nationwide survey by Opinion, the proportion of people from an ethnic minority who said they'd been the target of racial abuse by a stranger was 76% in February 2019. We have a Labour leader called unfit of high office due to his handling of anti-Semitism, and a Conservative leader who calls black people pickaninnies with watermelon smiles and Muslim women letterboxes. How do the candidates on the panel seek to address this?
Thank you. David?
I'm happy to come in on this one. I think the answer is culture. I think it's changing the culture of party politics. It's changing the culture of Parliament. It's changing the culture in lots of ways. And I think it's about being open as a society, being open to listen to what people are saying, being open to listen to what other parties are saying. You know, let's get the answers. You know, it's not all about them and them and them. It's about all of us. And we all need to interact and be open in society in every way. So I think from the way to answer that is culture. Change the culture.
Thank you. Peter, is Corbyn unfit to govern based on his ability to tackle anti-Semitism?
So I think the issue of anti-Semitism is not one that we have dealt with well over the last number of years. It is, and I think we need to, as a party, we need to stop talking about things like our disciplinary processes and rates, and actually we have to be turning back to the empathy and respect with the Jewish community. We have to win that trust back, and we're not there yet. And we have more work to do, and we should have the humility to understand that, and to know that there's more that we should do. I think we remain fit to govern, in answer to your question. I think but I think there is clearly a lot more that we have to do to.
Thank you, Julian.
So first of all, can I just respect what Peter's just said? I really do. I've got some Corbynite friends who are still in denial. It's still not a problem. Paula Sheriff MP, Labour MP, described in Parliament death threats that she'd received, and the Prime Minister said, "Oh, it's all humbug," and said that the best way to solve all of this was to get Brexit done. Now, unfortunately, that's the thing. That's the sort of the climate we're in. And we've got to be careful what we say. And now I'm going to sort of break rules. We're told not to do this. But David, your leaflet, so I've seen your leaflet, and I'm sure you meant it as a joke, but you shouldn't really have a picture which essentially appears to incite violence and killing a whole load of MPs, if any of you have seen this leaflet. We've got to all be careful of the language you use, because this is real.
David, do you want to come back on that? We haven't seen the leaflet yet.
Yeah, I think, and I hope everyone's seen the leaflet here. It's a joke. It's a spoof on a children in need spoof. of the Queen walking down with 007, saying all of Parliament, yes, ma'am. You know, I think it's just a spoof and a joke. I appreciate what you're saying. There was no intent there behind that with me, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Julian. But I think what this goes down to is and what the lady's talking about there in racism and hate, is a cultural thing in Parliament. It's about ignoring...
Thanks, David. Adam, do you think it's befitting for the leader of our country to make some of the comments highlighted by a member of our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come to that in a second, but I think that the key thing is that one thing that we have to fight wherever we see it in society is what I call...
Isn't it in the Conservative Party, though? Like it is in the Labour Party for anti-Semitism? I'm
coming directly to exactly that article. The one thing we've got to fight, though, and this is my whole raison d'etre in life, is groupism, where we say because you are Labour, then you must be wrong and you're dehumanised. Because you are black, because you are Asian, because you have a certain religion. So this whole idea of groupism, I think, is what's the dangerous part. And I think that the reason Brexit has exaggerated and exacerbated it is because Brexit is you're either pro or remain. And anybody in either camp is kind of dehumanised, and they can't be human because they're on the wrong side of the argument. So I think that part of this is why getting Brexit done does actually help to resolve that problem, because it means that suddenly...
So, member of audience here, sorry.
Because it means that suddenly we're in a position...
do you want to stand up, sorry?
Because it means that suddenly that we're
I'm sorry, we just want to hear from this.
Suddenly we're in a position where actually we can come back together as a society.
Thank you, Adam.
Rather than being in separate camps.
Well, it was a new question. Oh, okay, cool. Anyone else in the audience? Oh, just there. Maybe on there.
Hi, can I actually just say we were meant to be talking about Brexit and we've diverted off onto another subject. I thought there was going to be 6 subjects that we were running through.
This question directly relates to Brexit in terms of race crime, hate crime, post-Brexit. Sorry, do you want to... On Brexit. There you go, perfect.
So we live in an age of algorithm-selected media bubble. And I'm grateful that we live in a representative democracy where our representatives have more information than us. So I would expect my representative to look at fact-based evidence. So what evidence would you need in front of you to change your position on Brexit?
What evidence would you need? Wisdom?
So was that for me?
Yeah.
All right, I mean, Brexit, I think one of the key issues for me is representation, representing you. So let me ask you this question. If you vote for an MEP who is one of many MEPs, so has no direct say, he gets to choose to vote on an issue, but he doesn't control the agenda, so he doesn't control what the issues are that are going to be raised. And he can't actually change that decision of that parliament. Well, do you have any say at all in the EU? Or is the EU, let me finish, or is the EU actually controlled by a group of elite who we have no ability to influence? So I'm asking that question. So I think that's the key answer for me, key question for me is, if we can have a direct say in the EU, then my personal view would change.
Thanks, Wisdom. Peter, do you want to come back?
I can give you a real example because I have changed my mind on Brexit. So 2.5 years ago, I was also a Labour Party candidate, and after the referendum, I thought, even though I still think that our future should lay in being part of the European Union, the right thing to do was to leave, and we should come out. And actually, my job now was to make the case for re-entry at a later point with the next generation. But I've changed my mind over the last 2.5 years in response to the fact that the Brexit singularity. Every time you get close to a particular version of Brexit, it is completely unpalatable to a large majority of people that voted for it. And besides that, you see no appreciable value in that course of action. Add to that the things we now know about Cambridge Analytica and the ongoing Met Police investigation, and the fact that the Prime Minister is currently sitting on a report into Russian interference in our democracy. These things add up, and actually, I've changed my views.
The question was, what would make me change my mind in regards to Brexit? The answer is nothing. I stand for you as the constituents. I don't really have a view. I stand for you and what you voted for. I'm going back to this gentleman down here in the front row. So nothing will make me change my mind other than you changing your vote here for that. And that's my stance on that. So nothing would make me change my mind.
Julian, do you want to make a final point, and then we have to move on to the... sorry, do you want to respond to that?
We haven't spoken.
Sorry?
We like those two guys.
Okay, cool. Adam?
Oh, I'm glad you'd like to hear my response. So basically, I believe in democracy. We gave the biggest vote ever in the history of this country.
Let's hear what Adam says, Larry.
I thought we were going to listen to each other's views. So that we gave the biggest vote in democratic history in terms of direct democracy. 17.4 million people voted one way, 16.x million voted the other way. The result was clear, though. The public voted to leave the EU. I believe in democracy. We must therefore do it, and we're very close to doing it. And
So
then I
we
think
don't
can
need
move
any
on
more
to other
evidence.
issues.
We need to just leave. Is
Well,
that what
the
you're
evidence
to
is
summarise it?
the evidence is absolutely clear. People voted to leave the EU.
Julian, do you want to respond to that as well? Sorry.
I'll make it very quick. I would like to believe that I'm the sort of person that if there was such evidence that told that Brexit in some form or other was going to be wonderful, then I would say, yes, okay, that's fine. But there really isn't.
But you're
thing.
denying democracy.
There really isn't. And all we're left with,
Anti-democratic.
the only argument we're left is get Brexit done. And that is it. That's all they have. It's going to ruin this country.
Right. I'll just have one more question before we move on to the next topic. Okay, cool. Just one more question. Oh, we will go back to that candidate. So one more question from the audience. So the gentleman there, yeah, that one. Don't worry, Fintan, we'll come back to you.
I'm still here.
One of the longest dramatic pauses.
In the flesh
We'll
before your
save
very
the
eyes.
best till the last.
In the context of me, an ordinary working man working in, say, 2020, can you give me one benefit for leaving the European Union that I will gain, or one benefit from remaining in the European that I will gain?
I didn't quite. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't quite pick up on. I couldn't hear it properly.
You're in favour of remaining, so can you give me one benefit of remaining in the European Union that I, an ordinary man, would benefit what I would receive?
Freedom. Freedom.
Can you elaborate on that? Freedom from what? Sorry, do you want to elaborate on that before we wrap it up?
Well, you're free to do as you please. So it's up. The choice is yours. But if you're contained, in some ways you're restricted. But having an open society is freeing. It's liberating.
Any of the remainers here that might want to just give one benefit to the gentleman over there before we wrap it up?
I think what we don't talk about enough is the fact that Brexit is about removing rights from us as an electorate in a way that we have never previously done. The right to live, work and prosper in all the nations of Europe. So retaining that right, I would suggest, is a significant benefit of Remain.
Right. Okay, cool. Adam, as a Leaver, do you want to comment on?
Well, as a Democrat, I get the mood of the audience. But one of the benefits of leaving is that basically we're no longer a member of a protection racket that discriminates against people from outside of Europe who have different colour skin. Because at the moment we give preference only to people who are born within Europe. Whereas there are people around the world who have the same level of skills, the same level of ability, who basically are not part of that favoured group. So I think that's a great benefit. We can open up to the rest of the world. And make sure that we have a fairer way of dealing with immigration. I think that's a good thing.
Right, next topic. I think we're moving swiftly to economy. Jed from Windsor Boys School.
Hi, I'm Jed. I'm from the Windsor Boys School. We touched on it earlier. My question's about interest rates. Interest rates are currently, they're okay. I don't know much about it, but to be honest. But what will happen if they do skyrocket, if they rise, and what effect would that have on my life and on the future of the economy of this country?
Thank you. Fintan, do you want to start off?
Well, it will spoil your life, and my first principle, is the cultivation of life and the sustainability of life. So anything that hampers your life, which will leave you in a situation for the worse and leave you in debt, is a no-no.
David?
It's just no, you know. No means no. It's a complete sentence.
I'd like to come back on that, Jed. I can give you a bit of experience here. I remember having a mortgage and the mortgage rate going up to 14%. I remember being in negative equity on my home, and it's tough. It's not right, it's not wrong. You know, it's really in a false bubble at the moment of interest rates. So the situation is about making you feel good to hide what's really going on in party politics. So I remember those days, and it is very, very tough. And don't be surprised at some point the interest rates are going to go up. You know, it's not natural where it is right now.
So borrowing rates are quite low at the moment, and I think actually all of the parties are talking about infrastructure, and you've got the opportunity to invest in infrastructure, and I think that is good. There is a risk, however. There are storm clouds glooming. The economy has already contracted. I'm sorry to bang the drum about Brexit, but because of Brexit, and depending on what Brexit it could be worse. The other threat to the economy is if we allow spending to just get out of sync. And this is where I think there's a big difference. Although we're progressive party, the big difference between us and, say, Labour, who are just going to spend and spend and spend, and that could put borrowing costs up, and
Peter,
everyone will be
are you going to
poorer.
spend and spend and spend?
Oh, can't I take the interest rates question? So yes, we've set out a fully costed plan for how we plan to reinvest in the parts of the economy and parts of public services that have been neglected for the last decade. And I think we've been very clear about where the revenue raising comes from to tackle that. You know, we don't need to have corporation tax as the lowest in Europe. It wasn't before, it doesn't have to be now. We're going to put it back into the mid-range. So I think when you look at the plan as a whole, it's about the reinvestment into society. And these things, they provide value back in turn. You know, investment in the country is not just you know, don't be fooled by the idea that this equates to a household budget. It doesn't. A country's finances are a very, very different beast. And by investing in our public services, having a strong infrastructure and strong core, you set yourself up for growth. The Conservative Manifesto says it. It says the foundations of society are on good public infrastructure, good public services.
Adam?
We're the ones that will invest in it.
Yeah, so interest rates in the UK are determined by the Bank of England, and what they're looking at is they're seeing how fast is the economy growing. If it's growing too fast, then they put interest rates up so everyone has a little bit less money. If it's growing too slowly or we're going to recession, then the interest rates are low. So we have got interest rates at historic lows because growth has not been as high as we would have liked over a long period of time. And we have been growing every year. I think you were not quite right there where you said that we've been in recession. We haven't been in recession. So that's how interest rates are determined. But I think what you're getting at is government borrowing and the interest rate that's paid by a government to other people. And the interest rate the government has to pay is a sign of the rest of the world's confidence in the UK economy. So the reason the interest rates are very, very low for government borrowing at the moment, at historic lows, is because the world has confidence in the Conservative government's economic policy. Because they can see that we're going to be prudent, we're going to be pragmatic to make sure everything works well. The second that there's a risk of a Labour government, then suddenly you'll see interest rates start to rise because we all know they're going to spend 1.2 trillion and it'll be a complete nightmare like it always is.
Wisdom?
Jed, thank you for your question. As David has said, we have faced this before where interest rates go up, it's more difficult to live. But one thing that would have helped, and I think we should be educating everybody here, but also our youth, is really financial education. How should you live? How should you budget? Where should you put your money? How do you deal with issues like insurance and personal life insurance? So these are things, the valuable lessons which I think we should be teaching you to prepare you for life, so that you can balance your books, you can learn how to live well, but also have a view to the future just in case the worst happens.
Thank you.
We've got a question
was there
up
a
here.
question back in the audience? At the back? Cool, perfect.
Thank you. My question is, how do you plan to help the high street with your policies? Thank you.
David?
Interesting one. I have to announce I've got a conflict of interest here. I'm building a business to help the high streets because they're being severely ripped apart. But how do we help? The high street is going through a cultural change. Okay, we've got convenience shopping. We've got consumers who want convenience. The problem with a high street is a cultural thing. Again, I keep going back to culture, but it is about culture. It's about corporate culture. It's about corporate greed. It's about stripping out the assets, stripping out the pension funds of those businesses that now cannot adapt to the way that the consumer is moving. So you're seeing the high street chains that you've known all your life fall away because those businesses and the corporate culture and the people put in there were to drive wages down, strip the assets out of businesses. Again, it's culture. It's about people thinking about people and where they want to be. And so the high street question is a big one. It will take years and years and years to fix, and the businesses that have the assets and the resources to manoeuvre to put themselves in the position for the best choice for consumers will be the ones that survive. The small boutique shops will survive.
You know, again, I have to reiterate the basic principle that the whole economy is going to have to change. For instance, there's a shop just across the street called Zero Joe's, if you know what I mean, which is, you know, it's dedicated to recycling and not creating any more waste. And it's marvelous and it's inventive and it fulfills a purpose. And, I think it's good that you know about it and that we visit it, because, people who are prepared to change their means of life, and not necessarily on a greed basis, but for the benefit of humanity, should be commended and encouraged. So I mean, just speaking locally, if you keep it locally and think globally, you will get the overall concept of what it's about, sustainability and change. And could I just pick up on 2 points prior to the interval that we said we could possibly do? It was in regard to health, which is very well covered by everyone. There's a couple of statistics came to mind. Do you know the second greatest cause of death amongst men under 45 in England is suicide?
On the high street, is that?
It's on the high street, just outside, But
the question is the high street.
Okay, we'd like to hear from the panel. It's fine,
okay.
thank you.
Cheers.
Right, calm down, everyone. Thank you, sir. If you...
Sorry, is suicide. Health has to constitute mental and physical, because there's such a breakdown in mental health amongst young people, as I've just said, men under 45. Second biggest cause of death is suicide. I mean, that is staggering. That is completely staggering. So we have what is like really a sick society, all over, not just the environment, not just this kind of stinking thinking.
We'll talk about environment in a bit as well. So
okay, it's all environment. It's all environment.
Okay. Thank you, Fintan.
Okay.
Wisdom, would you like to comment on the high street?
Yeah, it's a great question on the high street. Clearly high streets were the place we used to do business, live, work, see each other, even get involved in romances. But this is what businesses are saying to me. And it doesn't matter whether they're a big business, multinational, technology, which is one of the businesses that have come to me, or even smaller businesses. And let's not forget that small and medium-sized enterprises employ more than half the workforce in this country. So what they're saying is that we need to look at rents. We need to push these rents and push landlords to force them to reduce rents where necessary. If it's economically unviable for a business to continue just because of the rents, then we need to relook at this, especially without absent landlords. Many of the landlords are pension fund companies that we'd have no idea how to get in touch with them to say, great, that store's been empty for 12 months, you need to let that at half the rent. Another way we could do it is perhaps even think about putting tax on and disruptive tax on internet businesses, for example, delivery. If you want to push people away from delivering networks which are carbon rich and don't help with the climate change in one little bit, then you could think about a disruptive tax which would push people back towards the high streets.
Julian?
3 things very quickly. The first is we're proposing a start-up allowance. I think you're right that it is difficult to start up a new business. The second thing is actually one thing that a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, struggle with is cash flow. Because what they find is that the bigger businesses don't pay their bills on time. And we're actually going to do something about that. And the third thing is specifically about high streets, is actually scrapping the rule that allows developers to just convert offices and shops into residential properties without planning permission.
Thank you.
Is there any questions around here?
We have a question from the audience up.
Any question on the economy around here?
They put their hand down, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Got one here.
Nobody's talked about the business rates, which are actually killing the high street businesses, because that's the biggest challenge that a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises are facing.
Adam, do you want to pick up on business rates?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to mention. So business rates are paid by businesses, but one of the great policies in the Conservative manifesto is that we've reduced the rate. Well, there's already a zero rate for small businesses, so you don't pay rates at all. And now we're going to basically give a discount of 50% to small and medium-sized businesses on the high street. And we have some fantastic high streets across the Windsor constituency, not just here, but in Ascot, Sunningdale, Sunninghill. There are some really great places, and I'd like to see them remain vibrant. The other thing that would help as well is the other taxes that are on businesses, particularly retail outlets. And one has to look in the round at national insurance, so that's why we want to see a reduction in national insurance. And there's one really great policy that we have in the manifesto, and this is very close to my heart, is for ex-military personnel, for veterans, where actually to make sure they get straight back into jobs, and there's plenty of jobs on the high streets around the constituency, that actually we deal with national insurance for employers, for those type of employees. So it's a big mix of things, and Wisdom is right to highlight that there is a shift where the big companies have big warehouses outside of town centres, and we will be looking at how we rebalance the rate system so that's reflected. Modern shopping habits.
Peter, do you want to wrap it up before we go into the next topic?
Yeah, so I'd also written down business rates in countdown fashion. Can you just verify that? Yeah, okay, lovely. Because and we said this 2.5 years ago, and again we've proposed moving for businesses, moving from business rates to a land value tax, which separates the rates you pay from the rent you're charged. And the issue of rent is doubled by the impact it then has on the rateable value of that property. And I think we proposed that 2.5 years ago, and all of a sudden out comes garden tax, etc., and you guys have had 9 years to fix this, and you haven't. And it was an issue 2.5 years ago, and it remains an issue now.
Great. Next topic, environment. Katie from the Charter School.
Hello, I'm Katie from Charters, and I'd like to know what... Pardon? Oh, Katie. What are you going to do both nationally and locally to face the climate issues we're facing today?
Great, thank you, Katie. Let's start off with the Green Party. What measures are you going to take?
Right. The first measure is to acknowledge there is a climate emergency. You're in it. This is it. And to raise the level of awareness to such an extent that people are compelled to react. If you vote for the Green Party, that's exactly what we do. We may not, and I say may not, win outright in this election, but we will create such a force and such a pressure on the current government per se, whoever, that you will have to respond to us, because there is no alternative to it. The environment is the economy. The old expression, it's the economy stupid, it's the environment stupid. The environment is the economy.
Julian? Oh, sorry. Do you want to finish your sentence? Julian?
Yes, so Katie, yes. No, you're absolutely right. This is an existential threat. It really is. And we need to take action, and pretty fast, really. Now, unfortunately, the environment is only seems to be an issue for some people. Some people are almost in denial, as Fintan was saying, that there's even a problem. And we do need to take action. What we have said is, first of all, how housing is actually the main, one of the first things we have to deal with. We're going to insulate all British homes by 2030. And then our power mix, how we generate our power, how we generate our electricity. that has to be moved, the mix has to be moved away from fossil fuels. And we've said, by 2030, we need at least 80%. Now, 80%, that's what sort of World Wildlife Fund, that's the World Wildlife Fund, Friends of the Earth say. We want to do it quicker than that, of course, and we certainly want to have 100% net carbon free by 2045. And transport, we need to invest in our transport as well.
Fintan, do you want to come back to that? Because
Yeah,
I feel a bit
it's
frustrated.
too late.
on that. Yeah.
Too late. Has to be done in 11 years, 2030 or finished.
Wisdom.
Great. I mean, you're going to have to stop me if I go on too long on this one. I mean, you're right. We've got an emergency. We have to act very, very quickly, 2030 at the latest. So we need to enable all layers of society to participate, including local governments, businesses, residents and landowners. If we're all doing something, the problem's going to get better more quickly. So we need evidence-based solutions to fund collaboration with scientists, technologists and best practitioners. We need to gather and collate information and solutions and make those solutions available to everybody. Local authorities are struggling. Many have declared a climate change emergency, though not all people have the word emergency in their title. But what we're struggling with is really to find the metrics, to find the methodologies and the solutions. We have to reinvent the wheel ourselves. Well, I think it's far better for the government to create well-researched, a practical series of solutions and tools to give them to local authorities, for land users, to businesses and to residents, and say, look, this is the strategy. Here's the methodology. Here are the metrics so you can measure how much greenhouse gases you're emitting, and then you can also then measure how much you're reducing by when you implement solutions. You can go back to the national database, perhaps it's the Centre for Alternative Technology, to grab their solutions and implement them. So you don't have to spend too much time, because time is very short.
Thanks, Wisdom.
And then you can watch the carbon footprint drop and drop and drop.
Adam, is the government doing enough to tackle climate issues? Do they need to do more?
The answer is the government's done an awful lot, and that's why we're currently in the position where we're way ahead of all of the targets that we set ourselves years ago. We're way ahead of the European Union, we're way ahead of the rest of the world, and we're recognised as one of the world's leaders in green technology and its application. But there's loads more to do. Actually, there's one interesting fact, is that actually, for many months, for the first time ever in the history of this country, for many months, all of the electricity generated in Britain, not a single kilowatt hour of it was generated by a fossil fuel. So that's how far we've come from just 10 or 50, that's coal or gas. Sorry, from coal. So we've come a very long way, but there's a lot further to go. So there are three things that we're doing. Number one is that we are utterly committed to renewable energy. So we've got the biggest offshore wind energy, renewable generation that we've ever had, and we're going to move that up to 40 gigawatts by 2030. And we're also going to make sure that we can do carbon sequestration and storage, which is where if you do still have old coal-fired power station, that you actually sequestrate the carbon and you store it or use it for other purposes. And that's not just beneficial for the United Kingdom, it'll be a huge innovative industry, but it's really beneficial for countries around the world, particularly developing countries where they can't necessarily afford this technology. So I think we're in a really strong position. We do need to keep moving. We need to keep moving quickly. And everybody in this audience also needs to do their bit in terms of their own energy usage, including electric vehicles, if you can do it.
Peter, is the government doing enough?
So, I'm pleased that the Conservative Party have seen the light on climate and have built on the successes of the last Labour government in terms of the renewable mix in our energy system. That's one of the lasting legacies, I think, of what we've achieved before. I'd also be interested in your references for the claims you've made there, Adam, for our leadership role in some of these areas. I think from a Labour perspective, we have. I'm extremely proud of the Green New Deal as a concept. I think we've created some serious plans for the reshaping and rebalancing of our economy towards carbon zero and carbon neutral. I think, and this is where a plan for the country as a whole comes together, because one of the key elements of, for example, the National Education Service is to allow for retraining away from carbon-intensive industries into the green industries of the future.
Adam, do you want to come back to the a point about
Yeah,
taking credit for.
I did acknowledge the little dig there, so I'll give a dig in return, which is that you say in your plan, which is a crazy one, you say that you're going to create 1 million or 1.5 million new jobs in green energy. We've only got 1.3 million people unemployed. So where are all these people going to come from?
Okay, go to the audience. Questions from the audience? Oh, the lady in pink, just... Yeah.
I'm an Extinction Rebellion activist and part of the UK Student Climate Network.
Sorry, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm an Extinction Rebellion activist and part of the UK Student Climate Network. I wanted to know... Thank you. I wanted to know if any of you have any intention of meeting their demands of people's assemblies on climate and net carbon emissions by 2030, or if you're going to continue ignoring the IPCC reports.
Are you going to listen to the Extinction Rebellions?
I think Extinction Rebellion did a great job in raising the profile of these issues, but again, I would just emphasise that maybe more should have been made of the protests in countries where they're just way out of kilter. We are one of the most advanced countries in the world when it comes to dealing with these green issues. So yes, it's really important. Yes, it's really important that we acknowledge what people are saying, but at the same time, we do need to go by the science and to make sure we're doing it in a pragmatic way where we can actually get it done, and we're doing well. We can do better, but we're doing well. And in terms of the environmental networks, we've got some great networks around the Windsor constituency. Wild About Datchet, 2 or 3 others are opening up, and I think there's a lot that we can do locally and practically in a micro scale as well to help the environment, and I hope that we do.
Julian, what's Lib Dem's stance on liaising with Extinction Rebellion?
No, I agree that it's focused people's attentions. I mean, I've already said about 2030 target. I just wanted to bring back to a point that has been made about the Conservatives taking credit for decarboning the economy here, because of course, as you probably can guess, most of that happened during the coalition. Now, here's one of the things that was a real shame when the coalition ended. We had during the coalition a £1 billion prize for inventing technology that could really bring carbon capture. Now, wouldn't that be amazing if fossil fuels could automatically become clean fuels if we can get carbon capture right? Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that win people round? But what happened as soon as the coalition ended? They abandoned it.
Wisdom?
That's a great question. I think citizens' assemblies are absolutely vital. Collaboration, it's all about collaboration. We have to work together to make this crisis end as soon as possible. I'm really happy to say that a lot of the work I've been doing with scientists locally at the University of Reading, and even as a councillor with RBWM, we've actually creating a citizens' assembly, and we're looking to bring people in and propose solutions and get people's views. And as Adam said, these are evidence solutions, and the work will be done by postdoc researchers at the University of Reading if we get the DEFRA funding. So it's a great idea. We're looking at it right now.
Thanks. Fintan, would you like to make a final comment before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, carbon capture is minuscule. It's like the house is on fire. We've got to put out the fire. Yeah? How? By stopping all emissions as of day one, as of now. How? By transitioning, by implementing policies that will allow people to transition from fossil fuel to other forms of fuel. You have to have an alternative form of fuel. There are alternative forms of fuel. So the people's jobs, as they transition, will be protected. They will just more or less move to another job, unless for some personal reason they don't want it.
Great, thank you, Fintan. Final topic, local issues. There's no opening question from the students, so straight to the audience. If anyone has questions on local issues, the lady in the front.
Helen Price. There are families in Windsor having to choose between heating their homes or buying food, even when both parents work. They can't afford both. How can this be in 2019 in affluent Windsor? What would you put in place so that Windsor families are no longer faced with such choices?
Peter, what will you put in place?
Well, I would say first of all that this as an issue that has risen again over the last 9 years. This the issue of working families experiencing poverty. That's a ridiculous situation. That should not be the case in modern Britain. And you could add to that the rise of homelessness, which again, you don't necessarily solve homelessness, but we had effective teams and strategies and programs in place to address that, and they've disappeared. And they've disappeared because of funding cuts, because we've had to scale back what we do locally in order to focus on statutory only, and everyone who's involved in those services will understand. I think we're going to address that issue. We've committed to a right to food, which is a curious phraseology, but shows the size of the problem that we face. And we will end the issue of working families in poverty.
Thank you. David?
As with Fintan, this is a national emergency. We need to see Cobra-style groups being pulled together in Parliament where we're driving resource back down to the grassroots. We need to drive it down immediately now for the guy who's sitting out in the street tonight where you walk past him and he's sitting there and it's pouring down with rain. But we need to drive that money. Everyone talks to me here, I hear on all the politicians at the moment, there's endless amounts of money around. So let's just get real dynamic and let's start getting Cobra-style emergency meetings, cross-party, and drive money down to the grassroots. And then let's look behind that. After we're helping people, let's look behind that and try and put in the infrastructure locally and throughout the whole resource of Parliament to local government, right the way down to grassroots, where we can help these people now. We should not have poverty in this country at all.
Julian?
So I read a statistic that apparently 21% of children in Windsor come from a family in poverty in Windsor. Now, apparently, that's good because it's quite low. Just think about that, 21%. It's sad, it's shocking, isn't it? And you're right, I mean, we need to certainly give children an early start. We need to put, we've said we need to put a lot of money. That's our biggest spending commitment, actually, certainly early childcare and things like that. But heating and food, I'm going to just pull out one thing, universal credit. Now, the principle is fine. The principle to me of universal credit, simplifying systems and all that. But the way it's been rolled out, in particular having a 5 weeks wait until you can get that universal credit, absolutely disgusting. And what worries me is that the Conservatives seem to be oblivious to this.
5
Absolutely
weeks,
oblivious.
Adam, do you want to come back to that?
I think I'd like to answer the original question from Helen Price. It's not right that anybody is living in either absolute poverty or relative poverty to a degree as well. And I think that the best way to get more money into households is to make sure that work pays. To make sure that basically when you earn a salary at the end of the month, that less money goes to the government in tax if you're a low earner, and to make sure that if you're on universal credit, that actually you're getting more money than under the old system. And those are two things that I think we've been driving at very, very hard. And I think we're beginning to see the results. I think, but also the most important thing is that you've got an economy that's really vibrant, so that basically when people move jobs, they're always moving up in salary, and that's something that I think a well-structured kind of conservative set of policies will deliver to the country, where unemployment is low, where people are literally, almost employers are begging people to come and work for them, and the salaries go up.
Hello, I'd like to know about how you're going to engage with your local constituents if you're elected. We've already heard from Wisdom around poll suggestion. Are you going to have weekly surgeries? Is it going to be on social media? Or how else are you going to engage with us?
Wisdom?
Do you mind if I take Helen's question and then your question? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so going back to Helen, if you want some immediate results, just think about what's our biggest single cost in this area. It's housing. It's our rents. So when we look at commercial landlords, I think what the council needs to be doing, actually the government needs to be doing, is needs to release resources so we can reinvent social housing. We can offer these houses to key workers, offer people to people who have had long-term residence in the area, or even to the most disadvantaged. So I think return to social housing will be also remove, and you may be shocked at this, the right to buy, because the new social housing needs to be there for future generations. So where the rental cost is the biggest factor, we need to work on that. Financial education is also another aspect which I've talked about. We don't teach, I'm speaking as an accountant, we don't teach our kids and our families how to budget, how to, what amount of money they should be putting aside for spending, for insurance, and how to minimize their costs of debt.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you, Fintan, in a bit. Member of audience that wants to ask a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall I take that second question?
Okay.
All right, to go back to your second question, thank you very much for that. Yeah, okay. So one of my commitments will be to have quarterly surgeries in and around the constituency. So, you know, in 1 month, one quarter you'd have it in Old Windsor, another time you'd had it in Datchet, another time in Binfield, possibly a couple of times in Windsor, because we've got a number of different communities. I also think it's not just meeting with residents, but living life with you, coming to your celebrations, championing the causes that you care about. But there's more than that, because I think the other thing we have to do once a year for each individual group is that I've been talking to head teachers. I think we should meet with the head teachers, find out what the issues are, how we can fight for them. What about the GPs? What are the issues locally? We should be meeting with them once a year. Same with the councillors, with the parish councillors and with the councils. So much more engagement with everybody here, not just one group.
Thanks, Wisdom. Fintan?
Yeah, the previous question is how can in the modern society people have to resort to food outcomes as opposed to keeping the house warm, and what can you do about it? So I'm pretty much a hands-on guy. For instance, I called on your door during the week, about a week ago, to see where you're in and where you're coming here. That's my style. I go, knock, knock, is Adam in? And no. I said, do you know if he's going to the hustings? I said, who are you? I said, I'm Fintan. I'm the Green candidate. And I'm the kind of guy, Windsor's not that big, you know. You know what I mean? If you walk around and you encounter a homeless guy and he's on the street and you talk to him and he says, I come from Windsor. My parents are from Windsor, but I'm homeless. And you go, I don't understand. What is it? You can't get a home? No, because they've no record of my coming from Windsor. And you think, okay. It's like somebody comes to you and they go like, I don't have enough money for heating, or I don't have enough money for food, and I'm in when you knock on my door. You know what I mean? And I say, okay, and I'll take you by the hand, and we'll go to where the food is, or where there's money, or whatever, and say, like, give the child food, or give the child, heat the house. It's got to be hands out. You can't do this by remote control. You have to be present, in the society. There has to be a presence that you can gravitate towards, that you can interact with. You can say, hello, can you help me? And that's what we need in Windsor and everywhere.
Before I go into the next question, does anyone want to respond to the lady's question about surgery and how they're going to engage with residents? David?
Engaging with residents, representation. It's critical, coming back to the gentleman's comment. I don't know whether I'm fortunate or what. I spend every single day in the constituency. Every single day. My business is here, my home is here, my family is here. I spread my time between Ascot, Wraysbury, way before I decided to spend time doing this and coming here. I spend every single day here. I will continue to spend every single day here. It's difficult to spread yourself around, but all forms of communication, online, offline, but being around, listening, just taking care of what people's needs are in the local constituency.
Thanks, David. Peter?
So I've had the fortune of working for an MP in my first role, actually, out of university. in parliamentary office, and I've seen the impact that they can have through weekly surgeries, the change they can bring about in their constituents' lives. And it was an extraordinary thing. You come in 5-minute slots, boom, 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 2 hours, always full. And that was fixing real issues for people. And I think that's a minimum commitment. What I like and admire about a number of the Parliamentary Labour Party is the way they're actually expanding the role of the parliamentarian into local activists. If you look at like Stella Creasy, for example, in Walthamstow, they're bringing programmes into the community and running them themselves.
Thank you. Adam, quickly, sorry, we've got to move on.
So the role of an MP is to ensure that you meet and deal with constituency issues as they arise. And in Windsor we have 18 wards. We stretch from Poyle and Colnbrook through Windsor Central to Ascot to Sunninghill to Sunningdale to Wingfield to Warfield, Binfield. So it's quite a big constituency. And the approach that I've adopted, given that there are 74,000 constituents spread across the whole constituency, is that to make sure that I always have one-to-one meetings. And the reason that I do that is because it enables me and my office to prepare. So if somebody's got an issue around housing, and there's sometimes issues around housing, among many other things, it means you can prepare before you actually meet your constituents. So normally, by the time that we meet, it means that basically the issue is resolved, or we can work out what we're going to do next. And I found it very, very efficient. And again, what I did find in the early days, I used to hold open surgeries, and I'm going to be frank about it. You get a load of political opponents turn up and waste all the time. So basically, I think it's more efficient to deal with people on a one-to-one basis.
Just very, very quickly, I'm sorry, but that's just not good enough. I mean, there are good MPs from all parties, actually. There are good constituency MPs, but unfortunately we are not blessed with one. Lovely man, not a good MP.
Right, last question before we move on to another subject.
Hello, sorry, it's kind of staying on the same topic, and Adam being the incumbent, this is kind of aimed at you. Unfortunately, you have garnered the nickname of Absent Adam amongst your constituents.
Yes, that's by the Lib Dems, it's one of their hashtags, and Julian's reinforcing it now.
I'm not a Lib Dem member, I've just seen it while looking at the campaign, but it would be good to know, if you do go on to win this election, what would you do differently? Because, seeing the reaction here,
the
people
Lib Dems
want
in the audience, just up here, the group up here, yeah.
So Adam, would you engage?
Okay, I'm not a Lib Dem, and I'm asking you as a constituent who follows politics and wants to feel seen by my MP and wants issues to be heard. I'd just like to know what you would do differently should you win this election to represent us and be a little bit more present.
I'll tell you exactly what I will do. I'll tell you exactly what I'll do. I'll continue to do what I'm doing now, which is see every single constituent who needs to see me. And that's what I do, and I'll continue to do it because that's my job.
Okay, cool. I think we've got no more time now, so I will invite everyone to do their closing statement. It will be a strict 2 minutes. So if I can start off with you, Adam.
So thank you very much indeed. For the younger people here, I hope you've seen how robust political debate can get, but I also hope that it's been enlightening too about the different policies between the various parties, but also particularly the independents, because it's a lot tougher for them where they don't have a set of policies that are worked out nationally. It's a lot tougher for them, and Wisdom in particular, I think you've done the last election too, you've done a really good job of basically highlighting those things that quite often, if you're a member of a mainstream political party, you might miss, and that's very much appreciated. So, as I say, I take nothing for granted in life, and I never have. It is a huge privilege to be an MP, and I mean that in the sense that you're only an MP if people elect you, if people vote for you. And if you do elect me as your MP once again, then you have my commitment that I will continue to fight tooth and nail against that third runway. I will continue to fight to make sure we get the Lower Thames Flood Alleviation Scheme put in place so that homes and businesses are protected in Old Windsor, in Datchet, Horton and Wraysbury. But also, I will continue to be absolutely conservative and free market in my approach to a vibrant local economy, because the only place that this country and the only place that this constituency is going to get its jobs, its livelihoods, its revenues that pay for the good services we want in society, the only place that money comes from is from British businesses being vibrant, engaged, able to employ and able to sell their goods and services. So I'm unabashedly pro-business, and I think that that's good for all of us. So if you vote for me, those are the things that I commit to achieve. Thank you.
Well, here again. Right, do you really want to live and die politics for years to come? No, you want to get up each day and get on with your lives. Enjoy quality times with your family and friends. Set your personal and family goals, feeling you can achieve them. You want to dream. You want to have aspirations. Get the support as and when you need it. You want to feel safe. Then you need new thinkers who can change the culture of Parliament and regain your trust. You need representatives who can put your constituents first, any party or personal gain, to ignore it and restore your faith in the democracy. Now, here we are in 2019, where recent years of broken party politics has created divisions in our society. Even here in our lovely towns and villages, a Conservative Party stronghold, we have division, passions running high for change. Why do we have division? Because we have had years of poor management by various governments. I can offer you representation and results. All the parties tell us they have the money, but it's not about how much we spend that is important, it's about whether we trust the 650 to spend it properly. None of the main parties have the governance, organisational structure and scrutiny in place to drive the investment back to you, the constituents. Please remember, this vote is for 5 years, not just for Brexit. Windsor could be the next protest vote in the UK for change. You can only do this by placing a person who thinks outside of party politics, who can put people before politics into Parliament. Let's stop the division. Let's pull one another back together. Let's take back control. Vote for David, the independent who does care. Thank you.
So as you've probably been able to tell by the progressive removing of jackets, it's quite hot under the lights. Grateful for standing up and getting some air. First of all, I'd say thank you to the organisers and to our excellent moderator for the opportunity to address you all today. And also thank you to you, the audience, for the participation and for giving up your valuable evening. Do you know what the score is yet? No? Okay, fair enough. Sorry. I think whatever you've heard today, it's clear that you have very different offers now. And I know in politics that's not always necessarily been the case in terms of how you perceive the parties. I've obviously always thought that there was a clear distinction, but the distinctions now are perhaps more marked than they've been for a generation. What I'd ask you to do is to go and find out about what the parties are offering. You've heard elements of our propositions today. Learn and find out about what else we're offering and consider that vote carefully. I obviously think that there's a very clear choice here, one that is all roads lead to Brexit, and another that says actually there's a plan here, and it encompasses elements of the climate crisis, and it encompasses elements of Brexit, and it tries to bring together everything that we need to drive this country forward. So I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your vote for me and for the Labour Party in order that we can set about creating a more fair and just society. Thank you.
first of all, thank you so much. It's great to interact with you, to see you face to face here in the audience. It makes all the difference, and this is acting, interacting. I talk to you, and you listen to me. You talk to me, I listen to you, and we work something out together. But, however you look at it, there's one necessity, and that is systematic change. Vote life, change. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for coming out here tonight. You can see that there are 6 candidates in a safe Tory seat. That tells you something, doesn't it? It tells you that politics isn't working for us here in Windsor or even in this country, so we have to change. We've heard from the wonderful people in the front row, worried about their jobs and about university places, about health and housing. But the biggest issue, the existential issue, is climate change. Now, I've got an experience of working with scientists, with people from DEFRA, from Natural England, from the Centre for Alternative Technology, to bring together solutions, which you'll find on the website in the next couple of days, representingyou.org. So it is really important that we address the climate change very, very carefully and quickly. Now, a vote for me will give you a friendly ear, as I've said. I will spend time with you and listen to you at quarterly surgeries, meeting with all of your representatives and local leaders and councillors. We'll push issues on your behalf. Remember, I'll fight for what you care about. And most importantly, don't forget this, I believe in you, so I will give you a direct say in how I vote in Parliament. Thank you.
So I'd like to finish with a couple of quotes. First quote is this: "The truth is, the public aren't convinced either of the main parties deserve to win this election outright. They're peddling 2 sets of fantasies, and both, as majority governments, pose a risk it would be unwise for the country to take." That was said yesterday by Tony Blair. Another quote. This time, now, Blair chose his words carefully, as he always does. He's a very, very skillful politician, whatever you think of him. He knows what happened to Alistair Campbell. Of course, Alistair Campbell is now he was yesterday canvassing for Luciana Berger, now a Liberal Democrat candidate in Finch's and Golders Green. Also yesterday, former Conservative Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine said the real issue at stake is the prosperity of this country, the world influence of this country, our relationships with our neighbours in Europe. This is the overarching issue at stake, and I cannot vote or support people who are going to make the country poorer or less influential. Now, I'll just finish with something about me. I haven't actually spoken much about me. So I'm half Italian, by the way. There you go. Hey. Half Irish. I'm also, I always think I'm half English as well, especially when the rugby's on or the cricket's on. I'm British when the Olympics is on. Team GB, yeah. I'm an Arsenal fan, which we won't talk about at the moment. Yeah, whatever. Anyway. And I'm also European. And I never thought I'd have to choose between these things, but sadly in the last few years, we've had to. And I don't want this country to be like that. And you can choose. You can choose to make it different.
Great. Before we conclude the formal part of the event, I want to say a few thank yous. But before we do that, if you haven't registered to vote, you've got until midnight tonight to vote. So please do register. gov.uk/register to vote. Every vote matters. I'd like to thank the candidates for taking the time to come out tonight. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Old Court and Winston Eaton Brewery, Swan and the Alma for hosting tonight. I'd like to thank Jen, Charlie and Nick for supporting tonight and organising tonight. And all the audience outside on Facebook and the audience here. I'm sorry if I didn't get to you, and I hope you got some answers out of the questions raised tonight, if not any. The bar is open till 10:30, and I think it's got 8 minutes left, so please do go to the bar and have a drink. Thank you.